On behalf of Beyond Trust, we would like to welcome you to today's podcast, focused around securing DoD enterprise innovation with ICAM, where Major General Joe Brendler, Steve Wallace, Systems Innovation Scientist for the Emerging Technology Doctorate at DISA, and Joe Broadbent, Senior Public Sector Security Director at Beyond Trust, will discuss why privileged access management is integral to secure the adoption of emerging initiatives across the government.
Thank you. So my name is Josh Broadbent. I am the Senior Public Sector Security Director for Beyond Trust. I will be moderating today's discussion. I have been in the identity and access management space for roughly the last 10 years, specifically focusing on PAM solutions. And I am really excited today to have our panelists with us, Stephen and Joe, and I'm going to give them just a couple of seconds to introduce themselves. We'll start with you, Steve. Take a second and let us know who you are.
Sure. So my name is Steve Wallace. I am the director of the Emerging Technology Directorate at DISA. So we get to work on a number of varying sets of technologies, and I've got a long history with ICAM, and ICAM is one of those subjects that I really do enjoy talking about. So very excited to be here this afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you. Joe, why don't you take a second and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Josh. I am Joe Brendler. I spent a little bit less than 32 years on active duty in the U.S. Army and finished up my career at Fort Meade, Maryland in December of 2016, where I was serving as the Chief of Staff for the United States Cybercom. I had a number of assignments prior to that, you'd imagine, including time on the Army staff in the Office of CIO G6 and at the CJ6 and J6 in Afghanistan, as well as Chief of Staff at the Defense Information Systems Agency prior to that. So I'm an alumnus of Steve's organization, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Happy to have you. All right, so I'm going to jump right into this, and we're going to kind of start by taking a step back, though. Everybody right now is talking about Zero Trust, or ZTA. I like to talk about how Zero Trust is a direction or an architecture. It's not necessarily like a silver bullet or one product. Steve, we'll start with you. What does Zero Trust mean to you or to some of the emerging government programs you're working on at DISA?
Sure. So exactly to your point, Zero Trust is a design methodology. It's not a product that you can go and buy and put the flag in the ground and declare success. It's really a methodology as you deploy systems, and you take a relook at your environment. Before this, it was least privileged. We always talked about that kind of thing, but Zero Trust is really that more of an envelope that goes around a number of capabilities and not really just focused on the user as much. It's focused on a number of things. When we in the department talk about Zero Trust, we talk about 7 pillars, the user and the identity of the user certainly being one of them, probably one of the larger pillars, but there's 6 other things that have to factor into a true Zero Trust architecture.
Thank you. What's your take, Joe, on Zero Trust?
Yeah, thanks. I think the way you have to start is by understanding that the only truly secure system is one you've already destroyed and therefore can't use, and therefore it's in fact secure. Other than that, everything is vulnerable to exploitation by adversaries, and adversaries are continuously trying to identify and exploit those vulnerabilities. So Zero Trust starts from the premise of compromise, that you assume that adversary has already found a way to get in, and that you're not trying to keep them out so much as you're trying to mitigate the damage that they can do now that they've gained some kind of a foothold. This requires you to apply this notion of trust nothing, verify everything to all sorts of transactions that are occurring on the network on a continuous basis. Steve talked about the 7 pillars: user, device, network, applications, data, analytics, and automation. My particular take for myself, I think the ultimate objective is continuous real-time visibility and control. And I think what we're talking about is control of behavior and access across all of the pillars. And I think that if you look at what we can do with analytics and automation and orchestration today, you can actually employ those pillars to assess information we can gather from the others and provide a feedback loop that we can use in order to gain continuous real-time control over the other pillars. That's kind of the notion that is formulated in my mind.
That's great. I appreciate that perspective. So I'm going to pivot for just a second and still kind of in this same concept of just getting our perspectives. It's been a crazy year in the cyber world. There have been a number of known breaches that have affected the Defense Department cybersecurity priorities. But I want to kind of pivot. Everybody likes to talk about SolarWinds and the things that happen there. Rather than the conversation of how that affected you, Steve, for just a second, can you talk about how a strong ICAM posture actually finally caught up to the SolarWinds breach?
Sure. So, and it's all publicly available information, but the way when the breach finally came to light, it was really a strong ICAM policy where a user was prompted with a multi-factor authentication step, and the user had the mindset to say, "Hey, something's wrong here. I didn't actually try to authenticate." So it was all the other sensors in the world. Sure, they were collecting data, but we weren't really sure what we were looking for at that point. It was really, at the end of the day, a strong credentialing policy that led, for the world to be able to surface, what was really going on there. So it's, going back to those, those pillars, that identity and the credentialing around the user is really critical to the way that we do business going forward.